Chapter 341, Top 10 Determined. Chapter 341, Top 10 Determined. TL Notes. Changed the description for Formless Sword, Original, Additional Profound Inheritance 1, Formless Sword. Converts heaven and earth into a temporary sword. The quality of the sword created depends on the surrounding environment and the magic array constructed by the user. Changed, Additional Profound Inheritance 1, Formless Sword. Converts any object into a temporary sword. The quality of the sword created depends on the object used and the magic array constructed by the user. Sure enough, the Eternal Ashes is an extraordinary weapon, Shifeng mentally exclaimed when he saw that his attack had killed nearly 30 experts. One of the greatest harvests he had acquired in his previous life was the forging design for the Eternal Ashes. The Eternal Ashes was a fragmented divine artifact whose value rivaled complete divine artifacts. However, it had an absurdly high forging difficulty, and even divine forgers had a frighteningly low success rate at forging it. On top of that, the weapon required many divine artifact-ranked materials to produce. As a result, it was a weapon that had only ever existed in the form of a forging design. Originally, Shifeng hadn't been expecting much when he used the pairing of the Eternal Divine Gold and the Eternal Ashes magic array to activate Formless Sword. So, it greatly surprised him when the replica Eternal Ashes turned out to be at the legendary rank. Only, as this replica was created using a profound inheritance and not through a normal weapon production procedure, it didn't come with any skills. Apart from some basic attributes, the only other thing that came with the replica Eternal Ashes was the mana immolation effect. Mana immolation was an ability unique to the Eternal Ashes. It was different from the widely known antimagic and mana destabilization effects. The mana immolation effect allowed the Eternal Ashes to instantly incinerate all mana, even solidified mana. Without the support of mana, it went without saying that a spell could no longer sustain itself. So, just the mana immolation effect alone was already enough to make the Eternal Ashes a godly weapon against all magic. Shifeng had never gotten an opportunity to use the Eternal Ashes or a replica of it in the past, so he never knew how powerful the fragmented divine weapon actually was. After using the replica Divine Ashes here, though, he realized just how terrifying of a weapon it was. Just the legendary ranked Eternal Ashes was already powerful enough to immolate even Tier 5 spells. Moreover, it wasn't even a complete legendary ranked replica. He couldn't even begin to imagine how powerful the fragmented divine artifact ranked Eternal Ashes could be. While Shifeng was lost in his thoughts, the battlefield remained silent. Nobody tried to take advantage of his lapse in attention to attack him. Instead, everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at him, horrified. Everyone even forgot to compete for the mutated heroic spirits loot. Only after a series of system notifications had appeared did everyone snap out of their dazes. Regional system announcement. Congratulations to player Black Flame for collecting 100 heroic spirits and becoming the 9th person qualified to enter the Ancient River's Heart. Regional system announcement. Congratulations to player Midsummer for collecting 100 heroic spirits and becoming the 10th person qualified to enter the Ancient River's Heart. Damn it. How can this be? Lightning Chaser's eyes turned bloodshot when he saw the system notifications, his hands subconsciously pulling at his hair out of frustration. Lightning Chaser wasn't surprised that Black Flame had gotten into the top 10. After all, the man had previously defeated Markless Blade. Now, he had even defeated so many experts. Going by the rookie competition's rules, when a player killed other players, they would receive half of the heroic spirit remnants collected by the players they killed. Shifeng had killed nearly 30 experts with his one attack. Even if he could only obtain 20 heroic spirit remnants from each player, he would still receive a total of nearly 600 heroic spirit remnants. However, Midsummer had done nothing but loot items this entire time. Yet, she had gotten into the top 10, fulfilling her previous claim of getting into the top 10. In addition, according to the competition's rules, players of the same party could share the heroic spirit remnants they had collected among themselves. So, the rookie competition's 11th place had most certainly gone to Wu Xiaoxiao. Only, as the 11th ranked player didn't qualify to enter the Ancient River's Heart, the system did not announce Wu Xiaoxiao's name. Even so, She had already qualified for the official phase of the Galaxy Conglomerate's invitational competition. This privilege alone was already enough to make her the envy of all players in the ancient River Kingdom. It should be known that many paragons weren't even certain they could get past the preliminaries of the Galaxy Conglomerate's invitational competition. Yet, now, Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao got past it without having to do anything. Had Lightning Chaser agreed to form a party with Black Flame initially, he, too, could have joined the Galaxy Conglomerate's official invitational competition as well. He wouldn't need to participate in the even more challenging preliminaries and fight against countless experts. At this moment, Lightning Chaser wasn't the only one envious of Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao. The other experts present, particularly Glorious Mantra, Martial Quad Beast, and Silent Saintess, looked at the two girls with a mix of envy and anger coloring their faces. In a one-on-one fight, the three of them were confident they could beat Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao hands down, even if the two girls knew how to use overtier spells. After all, overtier spells were the only things the two girls knew how to use. Given enough time, they could slowly but surely defeat the two girls. Yet, now, the two girls had qualified before them. Xiaoxiao. We passed. We can join the Galaxy Conglomerate's competition, Midsummer exclaimed when she saw the system notification. The Galaxy Conglomerate generally only hosted an invitational competition once every several decades. Setting aside whether they could win the Galaxy Conglomerate's prestigious membership, just the opportunity to participate in the official competition alone was already incredibly valuable. After all, this was the perfect stage for them to display themselves to the Starlight Realm's various conglomerates. If they got noticed by a conglomerate, even if it wasn't the Galaxy Conglomerate, it would still be enough to change their lives forever. Support us at bit.ly 3TFS4P4. Moreover, the official competition was different from the cruel preliminaries, where one would be eliminated after just one defeat. To ensure the quality of the participants, the official competition adopted a point-based system. That was to say, participants in the official competition could fight against many experts, which could greatly help those looking to improve themselves. There had even been instances of experts failing to get an invitation even after getting into one of the Galaxy Conglomerate's official invitational competitions, but eventually growing into Tier 6 powerhouses, sought after by the various conglomerates, because of the growth they managed to achieve from fighting against the many experts during the competition. I get to participate in the competition as well? Wu Xiaoxiao couldn't help but rub her eyes when she saw the system notifications, her mind finding it hard to believe this situation was real. Although Wu Xiaoxiao had never participated in a conglomerate's invitational competition before, she knew that almost every player who had managed to get into the official phase of a conglomerate's invitational competition was either a peerless genius or a paragon internally nurtured by a hegemonic power. Just the opportunity to participate in an official invitational competition was an honor in and of itself. At the same time, it was also an opportunity to step onto a bigger stage in the greater God's domain. Even if she failed to win anything in the official competition, just the geniuses and paragons she could get to know would significantly help her future development. The Starlight Realm was a very big place, far bigger than any individual God's domain. There were also well over 1,000 kingdoms and empires in the Starlight Realm, and every country had different legacies. Normally, it was impossible for a player to get acquainted with the various peerless geniuses and paragons scattered across the Starlight Realm. However, the Galaxy Conglomerate's invitational competitions made this a possibility. If she could get acquainted with some of the participating geniuses and paragons, these people might extend an invitation to her when they come across a fortuitous opportunity in the future. If she could get the help of these geniuses and paragons, she would have a much smoother time developing than if she were to do everything by herself. Only, Wu Xiaoxiao had never thought she could get into the rookie competition's top 20. With how many paragons were participating in the rookie competition this time, she would have been satisfied so long as she could see Shifeng enter the top 10. She never thought that she, too, would qualify for the Galaxy Conglomerate's official invitational competition. We've collected all the loot, Brother Black Flame. Should we retreat now? Midsummer quietly asked Shifeng as she swept her gaze across the motionless experts on the battlefield. After Shifeng had slain nearly 30 experts, the remaining experts, including Glorious Mantra in his silver combat puppet, no longer showed any intentions of attacking their party. These experts only stood still and looked at their party of 3. The scene was incredibly strange. "No need to retreat," Shifeng said as he scanned his surroundings with a faint smile. "They won't dare to attack us anymore. But, Xiao Xiao, you'll have to log off to rest until the end of the rookie competition." Currently, he not only possessed the strength to hold back the silver combat puppet, but he also had the ability to instantly kill nearly 30 experts. Everyone present was looking to join the Galaxy Conglomerate's official invitational competition, so, naturally, nobody was willing to stick out their own neck. As to why he told Wu Xiaoxiao to go offline, it was because he and Midsummer would be teleported to the ancient river's heart a minute later. Because Wu Xiaoxiao was currently in 11th place in the rookie competition, unless she died or went offline, she would be in danger until the end of the competition. So, the safest option for her to retain her ranking and the items she just looted would be to go offline. The normal logout procedure had a 30-second waiting time. Moreover, once a player entered a combat state, they would no longer be able to log out normally. Originally, the surrounding experts would never have allowed Wu Xiaoxiao to log out normally. Now, though, that was no longer a concern. Understood. When Wu Xiaoxiao saw that none of the surrounding experts intended to make a move, she swiftly chose to log out of the game. Shortly after Wu Xiaoxiao logged out normally, Shifeng and Midsummer were teleported to the ancient river's heart. When the several parties approaching the battlefield from a distance saw Glorious Mantra and the other experts doing nothing to stop Wu Xiaoxiao from logging off, they couldn't help but grow confused. Have they lost their minds? Why did they let such a good opportunity get away? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 342, Opponent. Chapter 342, Opponent. Star Lake City, Star Lake Training Center. Not bad. Not bad. Markless Blade sighed in relief when he saw the scene shown in the combat hall's holographic broadcast. My reputation would be ruined if Black Flame couldn't even get into the top 10. You'd be dead if you let Big Sis Blood Arrow hear this, Markless. The guild has already issued an ultimatum to show Black Flame the might of Heavenly Boa so that we can convince Gentle Snow to join Heavenly Boa, the handsome young man watching the broadcast next to Markless Blade said. Now that Black Flame has squeezed into the top 10, his fame is bound to rise even further. It'd be terrible for us if a conglomerate ends up extending an invitation to him. Don't worry. Black Flame won't get away, Markless Blade said with a confident smile. I know what Big Sis Blood Arrow is capable of. It might be a different story if Black Flame failed to get into the top 10, but now that he has gotten in, he'd have to fight against Big Sis Blood Arrow. At that time, he'll come to learn the limit of his abilities. It'll also become easier for me to persuade Gentle Snow. While I agree with you on Big Sis Blood Arrow's strength, I can't say the same for the matter with Gentle Snow. According to our investigations, Gentle Snow seems to share close ties with Black Flame, the handsome youth worriedly said. I don't think teaching Black Flame a lesson will be enough to convince Gentle Snow to join Heavenly Boa. It might even work against us. Neither the handsome young man nor Markless Blade was concerned that Empress Blood Arrow LaRoja would have trouble teaching Black Flame a lesson. Black Flame's achievement of holding his ground against a silver combat puppet and instantly killing nearly 30 experts might be incredible, but LaRoja could easily replicate these feats and improve on them with the help of her divine Twilight set. The problem was what would happen after LaRoja defeated Black Flame. While they hoped this outcome would make it easier to persuade Gentle Snow to join Heavenly Boa, there was also a high likelihood of it working against them. You don't have to worry about that, Markless Blade said, chuckling. Big Sis Blood Arrow won't make Black Flame lose too badly. Not to mention, Zero Wings Shifeng has already offended Chen Chitian. Once the City Legion selection ends, and the trial battles for official participants begin, Chen Chilin will definitely help Chen Chitian take revenge on Shifeng. Even if Shifeng has received the commander's attention, do you think a vice commander like Chen Chilin can't take care of a newcomer? With Chen Chilin's decisive personality, he might even make it impossible for Shifeng to join any ace battle group. When that happens, so long as you and I offer to help him, Our actions will definitely leave a good impression in gentle snow. That's a good idea, the handsome youth said, nodding. Shifeng had humiliated the Dawnlight Corporation in Star Lake City, so there was no way Chen Qilin would let him off the hook, even if he shared some ties with gentle snow. After all, an undeveloped genius was nothing more than just a genius. Even if gentle snow was monstrously talented, it would take her a long time before she could grow into an actual powerhouse. Moreover, while gentle snow had a very high chance of becoming a big shot who could go beyond the realm of mental strength grandmasters in the future, it wasn't a guaranteed matter. Hence, Chen Qilin had no reason to fear gentle snow at all. Chen Qilin also didn't need to worry about offending gentle snow and being unable to recruit her into the Dawnlight Corporation. Chen Qilin should know that ordinary corporations couldn't afford to recruit a monster-level genius like gentle snow. Only pseudo-upper-ranking hegemonic powers like Heavenly Boa and stronger powers could offer sufficiently tempting resources and status to gentle snow. So, even if Chen Qilin offended gentle snow due to his actions against Shifeng, it wouldn't bring any losses to the Dawnlight Corporation. Not to mention, Chen Qilin was a late bloomer. He might not have performed as well as gentle snow when he first joined the Star Lake Legion, but he had shown rapid growth after joining the City Legion and had already become a 2-star mental strength grandmaster. So long as he became a 3-star mental strength grandmaster, with his young age, the status he enjoyed among the various powers could even rival gentle snow's status. This gave him even less reason to fear offending gentle snow. Most importantly, Star Lake City was the Dawnlight Corporation's roots. If the corporation dared not take action against Shifeng simply because it feared gentle snow, the corporation's future in Star Lake City would be bleak. All of these factors combined made it so that Chen Qilin had to teach Shifeng a lesson. Moreover, there would be nothing gentle snow could do about it. But it truly is a pity. Even though the top 10 this time are all paragons, the battle inside the ancient river's heart can't be broadcast, Markless Blade said, sighing when he saw the image in the holographic broadcast disappearing. It is indeed a pity, the handsome youth agreed. Rarely would paragons clash with one another. Not to mention, apart from Blood Empress LaRoja, the rookie competition this time also saw the participation of the undefeated Battle Maniac Cross. With these two individuals in the top 10, the finals in the ancient river's heart could be considered the battle of the century. Yet, they couldn't see this battle of the century. It didn't matter even if they were willing to pay a large sum of star coins. The top 10 participants in the ancient river's heart were the only people who could spectate the finals. As for people in the outside world, they would only get to see the final rankings announced in the ancient river secret land. Goddammit. It's the middle of the day, yet we can do nothing but wait until Big Sis Blood Arrow is done with the competition and share with us her battle video, Markless Blade said, feeling even more frustrated than the handsome youth as he looked at the midday sun outside the window. Empress Blood Arrow LaRoja and undefeated Battle Maniac Cross were both regarded as invincible individuals at Tier 4. They were also mostly done with their preparations at Tier 4 and would soon take on the challenge of creating their own Tier 5 epic mana body. Hence, this was most likely the first and last time the two fought each other at Tier 4. If Markless Blade couldn't see the two clashing this time, it was highly unlikely he could get another opportunity to do so. Ancient River Secret Land, Ancient River's Heart, 2 beams of light descended outside a majestic temple situated in the middle of the Ancient River's Heart. Immediately, the 8 figures waiting outside the temple turned to look at the 2 new arrivals. The competition can finally begin. After seeing the arrival of the last 2 participants, a simple-looking man with a lean but powerful body reached for the 2 sharp axes he carried on his back. Then, he turned to look at a female ranger with long pink hair, his eyes burning with the desire to fight. The female ranger also glanced at the simple-looking man clad in dark blue armor, the corners of her mouth lifting slightly. Immediately afterward, an aura rivaling Tier 5 legendary monsters erupted from her body. As for the other people present, they quietly stepped out of the simple-looking berserker and pink-haired ranger's line of sight. Compared to these 2 people, most of the other people present had an obviously weaker presence. The only person here who could hold a candle to these 2 individuals was a savage-looking young man sitting in the corner. However, This young man only glanced at Shifeng briefly before closing his eyes to rest again. Meanwhile, when Midsummer felt the auras of the simple-looking berserker and pink-haired ranger, her complexion paled significantly. So, they are the two Tier 4 invincibles of the past. Midsummer was greatly shocked by the presence of the berserker and ranger. How am I supposed to fight against these people? Truth be told, Midsummer was rather proud of her current strength. After all, she was more or less a fourth-floor expert in the greater god's domain. Combined with her 120% epic mana body and 4 gods' secret art, she was confident she could hold her ground against even desolate fury. However, when she looked at the simple-looking berserker and pink-haired ranger, feelings of fear and powerlessness overwhelmed her mind and body. She couldn't even begin to fathom the two's current strength and concentration standards. It's natural that you can't beat them in your current state, Shifeng said in response to Midsummer's rhetorical question. Both of them are most likely equipped with items close to rivaling legendary equipment. Both of them have also developed their concentration to the Tier 5 standard already. Items close to rivaling legendary equipment. Tier 5 concentration? Midsummer gaped in shock. With such equipment and concentration standards, Cross and La Roja could already be put on the same level as veteran Tier 5 powerhouses. While Midsummer was in shock, the sound of a system notification entered everyone's ears. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3269, Chapter 343, Terror Descend. Chapter 3269, Chapter 343, Terror Descend. Chapter 343, Terror Descend. Regional System Announcement. 10 players have gathered in the ancient river's heart. All 10 players are required to enter the temple's 10 side doors. Once all players enter a door, the ancient river trial will officially begin. Regional System Announcement. The temple has a total of 2 floors. Players will pass the trial once they conquer both floors. Players who die in the temple will be automatically teleported out of the ancient river's heart. If no player can pass the trial, the last remaining player will be the rookie competition's champion. Regional System Announcement. There is no time limit set for the trial this time. The regional announcements echoed in everyone's minds 3 times, the announcement's content surprising and confusing many of the people present. What's going on? Weren't the finals supposed to be a series of duels? Why did it suddenly change into a trial? 2 floors. Hasn't this temple always had 1 floor only? Did we trigger some kind of hidden event or quest? The players present were both surprised and excited by this unexpected turn of events. Even Empress Blood Arrow and the undefeated Battle Maniac were not an exception. The ancient river secret land was incredibly mysterious, and it had existed long before even the ancient river kingdom did. According to rumors, a peerless treasure was hidden inside the ancient river secret land. Only, even after so many years had passed, nobody had actually found this supposedly peerless treasure. The greatest finding made was only the ancient stele scattered across the secret land's central zone. The only benefits players stood to gain from entering the ancient river's heart were the opportunity to fight against other experts, the incredibly dense mana in the temple, and the drawings on the temple walls. The temple's wall drawings were incredibly magical. If players observed these wall drawings for a long time, not only could they improve their concentration standards, but they could also receive help in improving the completion rate of their mana bodies. Although the wall drawings' effects were negligible to high-tiered players, their effects were precious to Tier 4 players. Because of this, the various powers assumed that the wall drawings were the ancient river secret land's so-called peerless treasure. Now that the temple's rules had suddenly changed, this could be considered a good thing in a certain sense. Past the temple's 2nd floor? Shifeng, on the other hand, got a mild headache when he saw the system notifications. He was 99% certain that the sudden change of the secret land's rules had something to do with the 7 Luminaries Codex in his possession. This was because the moment he got teleported to the ancient river's heart, he immediately sensed the dense aura of one of the 7 Luminaries Codex's fragments. He could even pinpoint the fragment's location to the inside of the temple. However, The problem now was that the system had clearly stated that the newly introduced ancient river trial would only begin after all 10 players here had entered the temple. In other words, the trial wasn't targeted at him alone. If someone managed to clear the temple's second floor before him, the 7 Luminaries' Codex's fragment would go to them. If he didn't want that to happen, he would have to compete and beat everyone else. What a lucky kid. It seems I can only take care of him afterward, La Roja thought as she glanced at Chiffon. Then, she made her way into one of the temple's side doors. After La Roja disappeared into the temple, Cross suddenly walked up to Chiffon and patted him on the shoulders before heartily saying, "Little brother Black Flame, while I find it unfortunate that I cannot exchange moves with you this time, I will be waiting for you at the Galaxy Conglomerate's invitational competition." After saying so, the undefeated battle maniac walked into a side door with a big smile. Seeing this, the other people outside the temple also quickly entered the temple one after another. In no time, the only ones left outside were Chiffon, Midsummer, and a savage-looking young man. When Midsummer saw this savage-looking young man, a flash of fear appeared in her eyes. Players from other countries might not be familiar with the savage-looking young man, but there was nobody living in the ancient River Kingdom who did not know about him. Saint 3. A once-in-a-century paragon from the Twin Saints Alliance. He was in existence even the ancient River Kingdom's 6 ruling hegemonic powers had to show respect to. Black Flame. You've lucked out this time. Originally, even if Empress Blood Arrow did not make a move, I would have let you know who the true first paragon of ancient river is. But now it seems that I can only wait until Galaxy's invitational competition, Saint 3 said in an arrogant tone to Chiffon. Use this extra time to find a way to improve. I don't wish to see you getting disqualified in the group stage's first round. Otherwise, the entire Starlight Realm will think the ancient River Kingdom has no talent. After saying so, Saint 3 also entered one of the side doors, disappearing out of Chiffon's and Midsummer's sight. When Midsummer saw Saint 3 was gone, she clicked her tongue and said, "Isn't this guy a little too arrogant? I doubt he even knows about your achievements, Brother Black Flame. If he learned about your achievements, he'd definitely be frightened." Chiffon's achievement of holding back a silver combat puppet and instantly killing nearly 30 experts was something Saint 3 couldn't even hope to replicate. Out of the players who had gotten into the ancient river's heart, the only ones who could possibly surpass Chiffon were Empress Blood Arrow and the undefeated battle maniac. "No, he indeed has the qualifications to be arrogant," Chiffon said, shaking his head in response to Midsummer's comment. Then, with a serious look, he continued, "If my guess is correct, the stone spear he carried on his back is most likely a legendary weapon." "What? A legendary weapon? How is this possible?" Midsummer was shocked by this revelation. Legendary weapons and equipment were regarded as guild treasures by the various hegemonic powers. Many Tier 6 experts couldn't even get their hands on a piece of legendary equipment, let alone a legendary weapon. The average hegemonic power would have no more than a handful of people wielding legendary weapons. So, to say that Saint 3 had a legendary weapon was simply absurd. That stone spear might be his personal fortuitous opportunity, Chiffon said. Then, after taking a look at the time, he continued, "Time is almost up, so we should get going as well." There was a 5-minute time limit for them to enter the temple. Anyone who failed to do so would be automatically seen as forfeiting their right to compete, and this definitely wasn't something he wished to do. Midsummer nodded in response and quickly entered one of the 2 remaining side doors. Temple's first-floor hall. After entering through the temple's side doors, everyone seemed to have entered a different space. Although they were in the same temple, they did not appear in the same. Before the 10 challengers could inspect the stadium-sized hall they entered, 9 familiar figures appeared at the center of their respective halls. These figures belonged to the 9 other people who had entered the ancient river's heart this time. The 9 doppelgangers were a perfect copy of their original. On top of having the same items, the doppelgangers even moved the same way as their originals. The only way everyone could tell that they were going up against fakes rather than the real deal was the diamond-shaped icons hovering above the doppelgangers' heads, an indicator that they were NPCs. I had wanted to teach that Black Flame a lesson, but I guess I can use his doppelganger to test the waters first. After taking a look at an inconspicuous man standing among the 9 doppelgangers, La Roja immediately drew her bow and sent over 20 arrows flying at the other party. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3270, Chapter 344, An Even More Troublesome Existence. Chapter 3270, Chapter 344, An Even More Troublesome Existence. Chapter 344, An Even More Troublesome Existence. Along with the appearance of the 9 figures, a system notification quickly followed. System: break the barrier sealing off the pathway to the 2nd floor and enter the temple's 2nd floor while surviving against the 9 doppelgangers. There is no time limit for the trial. You will be automatically teleported out of the ancient river's heart on death. The system notification repeated 3 times for all 10 players in the ancient river's heart. Upon seeing the notification, all 10 participants showed varying reactions. Some carefully observed the 9 doppelgangers before them, while some attacked the doppelgangers into action without hesitation. A minute later, in a certain temple plaza in the ancient river secret land. Currently, a holographic screen was displayed above the plaza, and the screen showed a list of names that everyone was familiar with. However, whether it was the players who remained in the secret land or the people spectating the rookie competition through a live broadcast, they all wore confused expressions on their faces as they looked at the list. What's going on? It hasn't been more than 3 minutes since they entered the ancient river's heart, so why are there 6 people disqualified already? If I remember correctly, the rookie competition's finals were supposed to be a point-based tournament, and every participant had to fight 9 matches before the rankings were decided. So, why are the results out already? When the participants competing for the rookie competition's top 20 positions saw the ranking list suddenly appearing, they couldn't help but grow confused. It was especially so when they saw the paragons, who had gotten into the finals, get teleported into the plaza with frustrated looks on their faces. The rookie competition's finals this time wasn't just a rare event for ordinary players. It was also a highly anticipated competition for the new generation of geniuses. Many geniuses believed that the finals would be a battle between dragons and tigers, so they were all prepared to spend big money to buy battle videos from participants who had gotten into the finals. Yet, now, before the rookie competition's top 20 participants have been decided, 6 people have already been disqualified from the finals. This situation was completely outside of everyone's expectations. What happened over there, Grave? Why did you get disqualified so quickly? Desolate Fury asked, his face colored in surprise and confusion as he looked at a white-robed male oracle who had just been teleported into the plaza. The oracle's name was Slumbering Grave, and he was one of the ancient River Kingdom's 10 great paragons. If compared purely in terms of combat standards, he was superior to even Saint 3. He was also an independent player. Although he wasn't as popular as Saint 3, he was very well received by the ancient River Kingdom's independent players. During the earlier years of his career in God's Domain, Desolate Fury had been part of the same adventurer team as Slumbering Grave. Even after he had joined the Purple Melody Alliance, he would often hire Slumbering Grave to help him with special dungeons or quests. So, Desolate Fury had a good understanding of Slumbering Grave's strength. In fact, in Desolate Fury's opinion, Slumbering Grave even had a chance of competing for the top 3 positions. Yet, now, Slumbering Grave was among the first 6 players to get disqualified. Moreover, the Oracle was disqualified from the finals in under a minute. The difficulty of the competition this time is simply absurd, Slumbering Grave answered Desolate Fury with a bitter smile. Not only did I have to fight against the doppelgangers of the 9 other participants simultaneously, but those doppelgangers were also perfect copies of their originals. They even have the same combat standards as their originals. There's no way to win against them with those few monsters mixed in. Even gods will probably fall to their joint attack, fighting against the 9 other participants simultaneously. Lightning Chaser was surprised and shocked when he overheard Slumbering Grave's response to Desolate Fury. Then, he continued with a shudder, "Doesn't that mean you had to go up against Empress Blood Arrow and the undefeated Battle Maniac together?" Empress Blood Arrow La Roja and the undefeated Battle Maniac Cross were apex individuals of their era. Even if one searched the myriad forest empire and the dozen or so neighboring kingdoms, one wouldn't find more than 10 people who could match them in a one-on-one duel. Lightning Chaser couldn't even begin to imagine how anyone was supposed to win against the combination of LaRoja and Cross. Lightning Chaser wasn't the only one shocked by this revelation. Desolate Fury also got goosebumps when he imagined himself facing Empress Blood Arrow and the undefeated Battle Maniac simultaneously. While there existed people stronger than those two individuals in the myriad forest empire and its surrounding kingdoms, as far as Desolate Fury knew, not one of these people could win against the two should they work together. In fact, it was unlikely that anybody had ever considered the possibility of those two people fighting as a group. No, those two aren't the problem, Slumbering Grave said, feeling a little exasperated when he saw the responses of Desolate Fury and Lightning Chaser. The real problem is Black Flame. LaRoja and Cross might be incredibly precise in their attacks and timings, but I can still fend off their attacks. But against Black Flame's attacks, I cannot block them at all. My only option is to evade. Yet, as it just so happens, Black Flame can cast a perfect world creation. Under its suppression, I can't even dodge Black Flame's attacks. Black Flame is even more difficult to deal with than Empress Blood Arrow and the undefeated Battle Maniac. Lightning Chaser gaped in shock. Although he found it astonishing that Black Flame had instantly killed nearly 30 experts in one move previously, such an achievement wasn't anything special when compared to LaRoja's and Cross's past achievements. Yet, now, Slumbering Grave, one of the ancient River Kingdom's 10 great paragons, was saying that the combination of those two people was easier to deal with than Black Flame. Lightning Chaser couldn't help but feel as if the heavens were playing a joke on him. Ancient River's heart, first floor hall, damn it. How is his strength above mine? Saint 3 cursed under his breath as he held his spear defensively against the inconspicuous swordsman standing in front of the barrier, a look of confusion on his face. Ever since he acquired the legendary equipment Dark Realm Gauntlets, he thought he would be unrivaled in the strength attribute among Tier 4 players. The Dark Realm Gauntlets provided him with an incredible boost in strength. Moreover, this boost would further improve as his stamina, concentration, and HP decreased. Currently, he had already lost over 2/3 of his HP. He had also depleted a significant portion of his stamina and concentration through the use of various advanced silver combat techniques. When all three of these parameters were at 100%, he could block LaRoja's and Cross's attacks with relative ease. Now that his strength was boosted even further, he could already send LaRoja and Cross flying. Yet, when he went up against Shifeng in this boosted state, he remained thoroughly suppressed. This was simply unbelievable. However, before Saint 3 could catch his breath, Shifeng raised the eternal ashes he wielded before abruptly swinging it down. Third sword, Holy Annihilation. Immediately, Saint 3 felt the space around him becoming a prison that trapped his body. Even with a piece of legendary equipment equipped, his movement speed still fell significantly, and he could barely hold his spear up to defend against Shifeng's attack. He couldn't execute any proper defensive or evasive maneuvers at all. After blocking Shifeng's attack, Saint 3 couldn't help but doubt his eyes when he saw his empty HP bar. Despite being a Tier 4 berserker with a piece of legendary equipment, he had lost over 1/4 of his maximum HP after blocking Shifeng's attack with his weapon. Moreover, that was only because that was all the HP he had left. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3271, Chapter 345, First. Chapter 3271, Chapter 345, First. Chapter 345, First. A streak of light descended on the plaza where the top 100 participants were gathered. When the light faded and revealed a savage figure, the other players promptly turned to look at this figure, looks of surprise appearing on everyone's faces. The new arrival in the plaza was none other than Saint 3, a person known by all in the ancient River Kingdom. He was also one of the favorites to get into the rookie competition's top 3. Yet, even an expert of Saint 3's caliber had lasted no more than 4 minutes in the ancient river's heart. I lost. I couldn't even beat a doppelganger of Black Flame. Saint 3's heart remained unsettled even after he got teleported out of the ancient river's heart, his mind constantly recalling the doppelganger he had fought in the temple. In Saint 3's opinion, the player known as Black Flame was nothing more than a stepping stone for him to attract the Paimon conglomerate's attention. Yet, now, not only did he lose to Black Flame's doppelganger, but he had even lost while having a piece of legendary equipment in his possession. If the outside world were to learn about this, he would absolutely become a joke. Isn't the rookie competition's difficulty this time a little too much? Even Saint 3 got disqualified so quickly. It's not surprising. After all, he has to go up against Empress Blood Arrows and the undefeated Battle Maniac's doppelgangers. It's already amazing that he managed to last so long. Most paragons wouldn't even last more than 3 minutes against those two people. Sure enough, it seems first place will either go to Empress Blood Arrow or the undefeated Battle Maniac this time, when you're just trying to make great content at Tinule. Com 37K 7U89T. Everyone in the plaza started a hushed discussion when they saw Saint 3 getting disqualified. Everyone was of the opinion that the rookie competition's champion this time would either be Empress Blood Arrow or the undefeated Battle Maniac. According to the Ancient River's Hearts rules, every finalist was required to go up against the doppelgangers of all other finalists. This meant that La Roja and Cross wouldn't have to go up against themselves, and they'd only have to go up against one expert of their caliber instead of two like everyone else. So, the difficulty of La Roja's and Cross's trial would be significantly lower than everyone else's. Meanwhile, when Midsummer, who got disqualified long ago, revealed an ecstatic look as she looked at the ranking list above the plaza. This is great. With this, nobody can question Brother Black Flame's position as the kingdom's first paragon any longer. Saint 3 was considered one of the Ancient River Kingdom's top 3 paragons. Before Shifeng and Saint 3 fought, nobody could tell who among them was stronger. Previously, even though Shifeng was declared the Ancient River Kingdom's first paragon, many players and powers in the kingdom refused to acknowledge him. However, now that Saint 3 had gotten disqualified before Shifeng, those players and powers would have no choice but to acknowledge him as the kingdom's first paragon. It wouldn't matter even if Shifeng ended up losing to La Roja and Cross. Neither of them belonged to the Ancient River Kingdom, so they couldn't be considered the kingdom's first paragon. Now, so long as the Twin Saints Alliance or the kingdom's Tier 5 and Tier 6 experts didn't go crazy, nobody would dare to offend Shifeng. This also meant that their party of 3 would no longer face any significant problems surviving and developing in the Ancient River Kingdom. While the players in the plaza were arguing over who would become the rookie competition's champion, a man arrived on the Ancient River's Heart's second floor. Sure enough, I'm the first to get here. When Shifeng saw the ranking list displayed in the second floor hall, he didn't know whether he should laugh or cry. Although the competition had yet to end, the Ancient River trial had created a ranking list based on the order in which finalists entered the second floor. So, those who arrived on the second floor could know how many people had entered the second floor. Meanwhile, according to the list, he was the first person to have entered the second floor. Honestly, Shifeng wasn't surprised by this outcome. On the contrary, he felt it was only a matter of course. After he got teleported to the Ancient River's Heart, the eternal ashes he wielded did not disappear. So, it went without saying that his doppelgangers would also wield the eternal ashes. Although the Eternal Ashes only had the basic attributes and passive attack effect of a legendary weapon, it was still a legendary weapon. The basic attributes it provided were more than enough to let him surpass the other finalists. La Roja and Cross quickly figured this out when they fought against Shifeng's doppelganger. Meanwhile, the reason Shifeng could break through the first floor so quickly was that he had done so using brute force. Under normal circumstances, if Shifeng were to try and compete against La Roja and Cross simultaneously, the fight would get dragged out, and he'd eventually lose after running out of stamina and concentration. Fortunately, he had the Eternal Ashes. Combined with Holy Annihilation, he had easily sent the doppelgangers of La Roja, Cross, and the others flying and destroyed the barrier. As for the other finalists, though, their situation was the exact opposite of his. It'd be an absolute nightmare for them to fight against his doppelganger while trying to break the barrier. Meanwhile, after arriving on the second floor, Shifeng got to experience the deep hostility the Ancient River trial had toward players once again. The number of doppelgangers players had to face on the second floor was double that of the first floor. Not only that, but players were also required to break a threefold barrier while doing so. Thank goodness my doppelganger isn't among them. Otherwise, there'd be no way to win. After taking a look at the 18 doppelgangers that had materialized before him, Shifeng couldn't help but sigh in relief. With the eternal ashes in his hand, he could unleash power at the Tier 6 basic standard if he executed Holy Annihilation. If he had to go up against his own doppelganger, the trial's difficulty would instantly jump from easy to hell. However, so long as his doppelganger wasn't among the doppelgangers he had to face, even if he had to face twice as many doppelgangers, the increase in difficulty was manageable. Even so, Shifeng dared not get careless when going up against the 18 doppelgangers. Godslayer. Shifeng activated Godslayer without hesitation, instantly increasing his mana and concentration standards by a large margin. Then, he raised the Eternal Ashes and swung it at the doppelgangers. Third sword, Holy Annihilation. LaRoja was a ranger proficient at ranged attacks, while Cross was a berserker proficient at melee attacks. The two synergized with each other perfectly. If Shifeng focused on only one of them, the other would use the opportunity to land deadly attacks on him. Now that the number of doppelgangers had doubled, one mistake was more than enough for the doppelgangers to kill him. So, if Shifeng wished to achieve victory, the only way he could do so would be to end the fight as quickly as possible. Before the 18 doppelgangers got into formation, he needed to swiftly break the barrier. Otherwise, without any healers on his side, he'd be worn down and killed if he chose to clash with the doppelgangers as he did on the first floor. However, as soon as Shifeng launched his attack against the barrier, the 18 doppelgangers had also gone into action. Firstly, the two undefeated battle maniacs joined hands to use a Tier 4 combination skill to deflect Shifeng's Holy Annihilation. Although the two berserkers were sent flying, their actions prevented the barrier from receiving any damage. Immediately afterward, the two Empress Blood Arrows launched two accurate barrages of arrows at Shifeng. The two rangers had launched so many arrows that they had saturated the space in the hall. If Shifeng did not defend against the arrows, he would get hit with 100% certainty. Yet, if he defended against these arrows, it would mean that he couldn't do any damage to the barrier. Subsequently, after making a minor adjustment to his movements, Shifeng executed another Holy Annihilation against the barrier. The first Holy Annihilation had already sent the two undefeated battle maniacs flying. So, the two berserkers could no longer stop this second Holy Annihilation. As for the arrows in the air, since defending against them would only lead to his failure, Shifeng chose to receive them with his body. Of course, he also made sure to receive the least number of attacks possible. Boom! At the same time as cracks formed on the barrier, two arrows struck Shifeng, reducing his HP by 20%. However, the loss of HP did not stop Shifeng's actions. Relying on his buffed concentration, Shifeng promptly executed a chain of Holy Annihilations. 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. When the fifth volley of arrows was about to hit Shifeng and claim the last of his HP, the fifth Holy Annihilation landed on the threefold barrier and shattered it. Immediately afterward, the sound of a system notification entered his ears. System, congratulations. You have become the first player to clear the Ancient River trial. At the same time, the ranking list above the plaza where the top 100 players were gathered received an update. This time, all 3 of the top 3 positions were updated simultaneously. However, when everyone saw the champion's name, they couldn't help but be stunned. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3272, Chapter 346, Chapter of Time. Chapter 3272, Chapter 346, Chapter of Time. Chapter 346, Chapter of Time. Ancient River's Heart, First Floor Hall. Why did they disappear? LaRoja was surprised when the 9 doppelgangers before her suddenly disappeared. Then, when she saw the system notification she had just received, she was taken aback even further. Did someone clear the trial already? LaRoja grew unsettled as she looked at the system notification. Black Flame. However, after giving the matter some thought, Laroja didn't find it all too surprising that Black Flame was the first to clear the ancient river's trial. The difficulty of having to go up against the doppelgangers of the 9 other participants while simultaneously trying to break the barrier blocking off the pathway to the second floor was absurdly high. Even now, she had only managed to exhaust 1/3 of the barrier's energy. Moreover, this was after she had used multiple Grandmaster regeneration potions to trade damage for damage. If not for the Grandmaster regeneration potions letting her instantly heal herself back to full HP, she would have long since gotten killed. However, it was a different story for Black Flame. Black Flame's basic attributes were so overwhelming that none of the other 9 participants could hope to match him. Even with her Divine Twilight set, Laroja was not a match for him. Not to mention, Black Flame was also capable of using that nigh unstoppable holy annihilation of his. Contrasting Laroja's reaction to the trial's abrupt end, Cross laughed when he saw the system notification. Laroja must be losing her mind right about now. Cross chuckled as he looked at the system notification before him. At the same time, though, a wry smile appeared on his face. Shortly after the trial began, Cross quickly understood that out of the 9 other participants, Black Flame would be the most troublesome opponent to deal with, even more troublesome than Laroja, who could attack from range. However, he still couldn't help but feel a little vexed to see Black Flame securing first place. After all, his original plan to compete with Laroja for first place had become a complete joke now. While Laroja and Cross were quietly looking at the system notification, an uproar had erupted in the plaza where the top 100 participants had gathered. First, Black Flame actually came in first. Black Flame is the rookie competition's champion. What's going on? Everyone in the plaza was dumbfounded when they saw Empress Blood Arrow Laroja and the undefeated Battle Maniac Cross coming in second and third place, respectively, while Black Flame occupied first place. Black Flame should have been nothing more than a nobody whose best achievement was coming in 7th of a miniature world's god list. Nobody thought he would become the biggest dark horse in this rookie competition. After this competition, Black Flame's name would most likely become known throughout the ancient River Kingdom and the neighboring kingdoms. The various hegemonic powers might even come to fear and respect him. Brother Black Flame came in first. Midsummer was similarly rendered speechless as she looked at the ranking list above the plaza. Shifeng could have already been considered a powerhouse in the ancient River Kingdom after his previous achievement of winning against Saint 3 and becoming the ancient River Kingdom's first paragon. Those achievements were also enough to make the kingdom's 6 ruling hegemonic powers fear him. Now, Shifeng had taken things a step further by beating Empress Blood Arrow and the undefeated Battle Maniac and becoming the rookie competition's champion. Although Shifeng didn't defeat those 2 in a direct confrontation, this victory was more than enough to put him among the top of all Tier 4 experts in the Myriad Forest Empire and the dozen or so surrounding kingdoms. Even the city legions of second-tier cities would most likely try to recruit him. After all, Laroja and Cross had never lost to anyone they challenged or competed against. Now that Shifeng had won against those 2 people, no Tier 4 player would dare to stand in his way in the ancient River Kingdom. Even if he moved to develop in the Myriad Forest Empire, he wouldn't encounter any problems. While Midsummer was getting excited over the fact that their party of 3 could head to the Myriad Forest Empire to develop in the future, Shifeng, who sat lying on the floor of the ancient river's heart's second floor in exhaustion, suddenly revealed an excited expression. After conquering the ancient river's trial, the divine drawings on the walls and stone pillars around him suddenly exuded a bright glow. Then, 30 seconds later, a semi-translucent piece of paper appeared in the center of the hall. The instant this piece of paper appeared, Shifeng could feel a divine might enveloping him. Moreover, this wasn't just any ordinary divine might, since his senses told him it was stronger than even the divine might of Tier 6 gods. Theft is never good, try looking at Tinyal. Com 37K7U89T. Although this divine might only appeared briefly before disappearing, Shifeng understood that the piece of paper was definitely something extraordinary. Moreover, the 7 Luminaries Codex in his bag had also grown incredibly restless, as if it could jump out of his bag space at any moment. The 7 Luminaries Codex's fragment. Apart from a fragment of a godly relic that had existed since the birth of God's domain, Chiffon could think of no other item that could exude such an extraordinary divine might and get such a reaction from the 7 Luminaries Codex. So, this is the fragment's power? When Chiffon got within 10 yards of the piece of paper, he felt like he had just entered an invisible barrier. The closer he got to the paper, the stronger the suppression acting on his concentration became and the heavier his body felt. By the time Chiffon got within 1 yard of the paper, his thoughts had become incredibly sluggish, and his body felt like it was filled with lead. At this moment, he couldn't even beat a great lord of the same level, let alone a mythic monster. System: do you wish to collect the Chapter of Time? System: once you collect the Chapter of Time, you will be cursed by the God of Time. The curse will reduce your experience gain by 90% and triple the gravity you experience. The Chapter of Time will also have a 100% drop rate on death. The God of Time's curse. Chiffon was shocked when he saw the system notification. Isn't this penalty a little too brutal? The God of Time was one of God's domain's 12 great gods. While not an ancient god, the God of Time was an existence superior to ancient gods. So, being cursed by such a god was no laughing matter. Moreover, this curse was permanent. Chiffon couldn't get rid of it even if he got promoted to Tier 6. He could never get rid of this curse unless he had the strength to go against the God of Time. It would follow him forever, even if he deleted his account and started a new one. However, after hesitating for a moment, Chiffon still chose to collect the Chapter of Time. The 7 Luminaries Codex was a godly relic that had existed since the birth of God's domain. Meanwhile, the Chapter of Time was one of the Codex's power sources. It even governed over the element of time, one of the 3 supreme elements. If he missed this opportunity to acquire the Chapter of Time, who knew when he'd be able to find the next chapter? It should be known that he had limited time to repair the 7 Luminaries Codex. Even if he wasn't cursed by the God of Time, he'd still lose everything if he failed to complete his quest. Since he would be doomed either way, he might as well take the Chapter of Time and give the 7 Luminaries Codex more eternal energy. That way, he'd have more time to search for the other chapters. As for the reduction in experience gain, so long as his tier was sufficiently high, acquiring experience points wouldn't be a problem. The only problem was the increase in the gravity he experienced. A 3 times increase in gravity would not only reduce his mobility and reaction speed but also increase his stamina consumption significantly. Meanwhile, after Chiffon chose to collect the Chapter of Time, a debuff named God of Time's Curse appeared in his status bar. At the same time, his body grew heavier, and his mobility fell by roughly 30 to 40%. The effect of the gravity increase really is significant. Chiffon revealed a wry smile when he sensed the changes in his body. However, before Chiffon could inspect the Chapter of Time he had just acquired, the entire ancient river secret land suddenly started to tremble. Regional system announcement: the ancient river secret land's power source has been exhausted. The secret land will collapse in 5 minutes. All players are recommended to leave the secret land as soon as possible. As soon as the system announcement appeared, the players in the ancient river secret land immediately went into an uproar. The ancient river secret land was an existence older than the ancient river kingdom. It was also an important resource for cultivating the kingdom's newcomers. Yet, now, the secret land was suddenly collapsing. There was absolutely something strange with this situation. This situation also most definitely had something to do with the abrupt change in the finals rules. However, nobody chose to delve deeper into the matter for now. Instead, they promptly took out the secret land teleportation scrolls they received when they entered the secret land and teleported out of the secret land, none daring to spend even a moment longer here. Retreat. Everyone retreat. Players from isolated gods' domains might be unfamiliar with the collapse of secret lands, but this wasn't anything new for players in the greater god's domain. The collapse of a secret land was similar to the collapse of a god's domain. Once a secret land collapsed, it would transform into an empty void. If players in the secret land did not withdraw in time, even their souls would get erased, and they'd have no choice but to start a new account. Shortly after the remaining players in the ancient river secret land withdrew, the secret land's collapse caused the entire ancient river kingdom to tremble. Cracks had even appeared all over the kingdom's sky, making it seem like Armageddon had arrived for the kingdom. At the same time, independent players and powers all over the ancient river kingdom began frantically looking into the cause of the ancient river secret land's collapse. In God's domain, major events often come with huge opportunities. A monumental event such as the ancient river secret land's collapse would most certainly come with an unimaginable opportunity. Meanwhile, the 10 players who had entered the ancient river's heart naturally became the key suspects behind the secret land's collapse. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3273, Chapter 347, Legendary Flying Mount. Chapter 3273, Chapter 347, Legendary Flying Mount. Chapter 347, Legendary Flying Mount. TL Notes. Phi Red players equals players who have killed other players or committed minor crimes, in the eyes of NPCs. Black players equals players who have killed many players, according to the main story, or committed severe crimes. Dark players equals players operating in the dark side of God's domain. Ancient River Kingdom, Gazing Moon City, Gazing Moon Hotel, Brother Black Flame. Based on my advanced detection magic, more than 10 parties are spying on us, and these parties have over 30 Tier 5 experts in total. These parties are formed by either experts from dark guilds or independent experts. By the looks of things, they seem intent on taking action in the city, Midsummer said while marking the locations of the Tier 5 experts she detected nearby on the map on the table. If they attack us together, I'm afraid not even the city's main street will be safe. Have these people lost their minds? They can't even determine if we are behind the ancient river secret land's collapse, yet they're planning on attacking us in the city. Are they not worried we'll take revenge on them in the future? Wu Xiaoxiao said as she looked at the map. It hadn't been more than 20 minutes since the ancient river secret land's collapse. Yet, when their party of 3 used to return to the Gazing Moon Hotel, a total of 14 parties and 33 Tier 5 experts had already gathered to hunt them. These Tier 5 experts ranged between level 160 and level 180, many of whom were well-known black players even she knew about. Black players were players who had committed great sins in the greater God's domain, and their names would be colored black. Most black players in the greater God's domain tended to be titled experts. Meanwhile, players killed by these black players would have their death drop doubled or tripled. However, being a black player came with huge risks. So long as a black player got caught by NPCs or captured by players and handed over to NPCs, they'd either have to start a new account or wait for someone to rescue them. Hence, black players normally wouldn't take action inside a city without a good reason. Yet, now, there were 3 Tier 5 black players and 30 Tier 5 experts surrounding the Gazing Moon Hotel. Such a lineup was already enough to kill even the executives of hegemonic powers. While the greater God's domain's hegemonic powers might have quite a few Tier 6 experts under their command, these Tier 6 experts typically wouldn't operate within the borders of kingdoms and empires. Instead, they'd be exploring uncharted locations. Moreover, because of the unspoken rules of the various kingdoms and empires, Tier 6 players were prohibited from casually taking action. Because of this, Tier 5 players were regarded as apex combatants in the various kingdoms and empires. You're overly underestimating these people, Xiao Xiao. If we are talking about the ancient river kingdom's normal powers and players, they naturally won't dare to provoke us. Rather than provoking us, they are eagerly looking for opportunities to curry favor with Brother Black Flame. After all, their roots are in the kingdom. It'd be tough for them to move to other places to develop, Midsummer said. But the people outside the hotel aren't normal players. They're people who have taken the lives of many. It is especially true for those 3 dark players. If they can't survive in the ancient river kingdom, they can simply head over to another kingdom or empire. They can even head to other realms. So, they aren't worried about us taking revenge on them. Also, it's not exactly a mistake for them to target us, Shifeng said, chuckling as he looked out the window. You can even say that they've made a very good decision. After all, setting aside the secret land's collapse, our party has collected all of the mutated heroic spirits loot in full view of everyone. How are you still in the mood to laugh, Brother Black Flame? We can't even step out into the city's main street right now, Midsummer said, feeling a little exasperated over Shifeng's behavior. Their party might have the strength to fight against Tier 5 players right now, but it didn't change the fact that all three of them were still at Tier 4. It wouldn't be easy for them to get an edge over red and black players who would often engage in PvP. Not to mention, they were also heavily outnumbered right now. We don't have to worry about those people for now. Our priority should be to sort through our harvest, Shifeng said with a smile. The harvest he gained through the chapter of time far exceeded his imagination, so much so that he even thought that the God of Time's curse was insignificant in comparison. After the chapter of time merged with the 7 Luminaries Codex, not only did it let the Codex recover a significant amount of eternal energy, but it also granted it a heaven-defying skill. 7 Luminaries Codex, legendary rank, current, one of the godly relics birthed along with God's domain. The 7 Luminaries Codex carries 7 powers of creation. Currently, the Codex has been deprived of all 7 of these powers and only retains a small trace of eternal energy. Only by collecting all 7 powers can the Codex's power be restored. Cannot be destroyed. Cannot be traded. Cannot be dropped. The eternal energy in the Codex will dissipate over time. Currently, there are 744 days remaining until the Codex's energy dissipates completely. Additional active skill 1 Omni-refinement, refine all elements and substances unconditionally. No cooldown. Additional active skill 2 Elemental search, reveal all mineral veins within a 300,000 yard radius. Cooldown, 12 hours. Additional active skill 3 Time crystal, absorb 1 level from the user to create 1 time crystal. Time crystals can be used to upgrade weapons, equipment, and tools. The higher the target item's quality, the more time crystals will be needed to upgrade it. Cooldown, 1 hour. There are currently 11 time crystals stored. A maximum of 30 time crystals can be stored. Time crystals will automatically dissipate if they are left outside their storage space for more than 5 minutes. Additional passive skill 7 Luminaries Guidance, automatically detects fragments of the 7 Luminaries Codex within a 5 million yard radius. Shifeng had never heard of anything similar to the time crystal skill. Although he had to sacrifice his levels on top of suffering from a 90% experience gain reduction to use this skill, no player could resist the skill's heaven-defying effect. After all, the acquisition of powerful items was significantly more challenging than acquiring EXP. However, Shifeng had no plans of sharing the time crystal skill secrets with anybody. After all, the 7 Luminaries Codex was a priceless treasure. If news of it got out, even the greater God's domain's apex powers would do everything they could to acquire it, let alone the greater world's conglomerates. Meanwhile, after hearing Shifeng's words, Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao excitedly took out the items they looted from the mutated heroic spirit from their bags and began inspecting their harvest. A Tier 4 mutated heroic spirit's loot was equivalent to a Tier 5 legendary world boss's loot in the greater God's domain. Meanwhile, legendary world bosses were incredibly rare, even in the greater God's domain. Every one of these world bosses was a target of contention for the various upper-ranking hegemonic powers. To ensure their monopoly, the various upper-ranking hegemonic powers would even station numerous Tier 6 powerhouses to keep watch over the world bosses' spawn locations. So, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the Tier 4 mutated heroic spirits loot was outside the reach of even ordinary hegemonic powers, let alone fourth-floor experts like them. Around 10 minutes after Shifeng and the others started sorting through their haul, Shifeng held up a dark purple pendant with a dazed expression on his face. A legendary flying mount. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3274, Chapter 348, Frostflame Phantom Dragon. Chapter 3274, Chapter 348, Frostflame Phantom Dragon. Chapter 348, Frostflame Phantom Dragon. Upon hearing Shifeng's surprised exclamation, Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao turned away from the loot they were sorting to look at Shifeng simultaneously, the expressions on their faces looking like they had just heard the most unbelievable thing in this world. A legendary flying mount. Are you trying to trick us, Brother Black Flame? Midsummer asked as she dubiously looked at the dark purple pendant in Shifeng's hand. There are less than 100 legendary flying mounts recorded in the entire Starlight realm. How can a mythic ranked mutated heroic spirit possibly drop such a flying mount? Wu Xiaoxiao also silently nodded in agreement, thinking that Shifeng was joking with them. While flying mounts could be categorized into 4 ranks, namely common, extraordinary, legendary, and mythic, it was widely known that the highest-ranking mounts most players could ever see were extraordinary flying mounts. Indeed, extraordinary flying mounts. The reason for this was because of the ridiculous rarity of legendary flying mounts. They were rarer than even legendary weapons. They were so rare that there did not exist a single legendary flying mount in the entire ancient River Kingdom. Even the guild leaders of the kingdom's 6 ruling hegemonic powers were only using extraordinary flying mounts. Of course, it should be noted that apart from the 4 major ranks, each of the 4 major ranks of flying mounts could be further categorized into 3 minor ranks: basic, intermediate, and advanced. Meanwhile, the guild leaders of the 6 ruling hegemonic powers' flying mounts were at the advanced extraordinary rank, and most Tier 6 experts could only dream of owning such a flying mount. Although flying mounts weren't as rare in the greater God's domain as in the average God's domain, they were still luxury items. Even the most inferior common flying mount was out of reach for many Tier 5 players, let alone Tier 4 players. Rarely would one see a Tier 4 player with a flying mount, even if said Tier 4 player was a genius nurtured by a hegemonic power. There were a few reasons for this situation. Firstly, flying mounts were in short supply. Secondly, flying mounts were extremely expensive to cultivate, and players who weren't core executives of a power couldn't afford to cultivate even a common flying mount. Flying mounts differed from land mounts in that their tiers could be raised. Only, the chances of successfully upgrading a flying mount's tier would change depending on its rank. If players wished to cultivate flying mounts, the first hurdle they needed to face would be the food they fed to their flying mounts. Common food would not be enough to let a flying mount grow properly. Normally, rare-grade fruits would be needed to properly cultivate a common flying mount. Meanwhile, rare-grade fruits were priced in magic crystals, and it was normal for a flying mount to consume several dozen kilos of fruit every day. As for the cultivation of extraordinary mounts, epic-grade fruits would be needed. The cost of feeding an extraordinary mount alone was enough to bankrupt even Tier 5 experts belonging to a power. Of course, while cultivating extraordinary flying mounts might be expensive, it was also worth the money. This was because extraordinary flying mounts had the potential of getting promoted to the Tier 5 legendary rank. Moreover, they would be much stronger than the average Tier 5 legendary monster, rivaling Tier 5 archaic species of the same level. They could also traverse between realms, allowing players to save on the exorbitant cost of traveling between realms. As for legendary flying mounts, even the most inferior basic legendary flying mount had the possibility of getting promoted to Tier 6. Meanwhile, so long as players could cultivate a legendary flying mount to Tier 6, it'd be equivalent to gaining a Tier 6 powerhouse as a helper. Tier 6 players without legendary weapons would have to either run away or fight as a group if they were to go up against a Tier 6 legendary flying mount. Of course, cultivating a legendary flying mount to Tier 6 was an incredibly challenging task. Even ordinary hegemonic powers couldn't necessarily accomplish such a feat, don't believe me? Seeing that the 2 girls thought he was joking, Shifeng smiled and shared the dark purple pendant stats with them. If you don't believe me, you can see it yourself. When Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao saw the pendant's data, their eyes widened as if they had just seen a ghost. Ancient Oath can be used to summon a legendary rank Frostflame Phantom Dragon as a partner to fly and fight freely in the sky. If the Frostflame Phantom Dragon dies, it will need 25 natural days to return to life. How can this be? Is that mutated heroic spirit really just a Tier 4 mutant? After seeing the pendant stats, Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao couldn't help but feel that Shifeng had heaven-defying luck. According to records made in the Starlight Realm, out of all the known legendary flying mounts, over 80% of them were acquired through killing Tier 6 gods, while the rest were acquired as a reward for completing legendary world quests. If it was made known that a Tier 4 mutated heroic spirit had dropped a legendary flying mount, no, even if the mutated heroic spirit only dropped an extraordinary flying mount, The news would probably cause the greater god's domain's various powers to go on a hunt for mutated heroic spirits. They might even go for ordinary heroic spirits to try their luck. But it's a pity that the Frostflame Phantom Dragon is only a basic legendary flying mount. Its chances of getting promoted to Tier 6 are less than 5%, Shifeng said, feeling a little disappointed as he looked at the ancient oath. The Frostflame Phantom Dragon might be called a dragon, but it wasn't a real dragon. Instead, it was a dragon-shaped ancient beast. It only had the appearance of a dragon. In terms of life ratings, it was only slightly stronger than the average archaic species. It couldn't even compete against four-winged valkyries, let alone true dragons. As a basic legendary flying mount, the Frostflame Phantom Dragon started at the Tier 4 peak standard. Although it was much better off than extraordinary flying mounts, which started at Tier 3, it only had a 25% success rate of getting promoted to Tier 5 and a 5% success rate of getting promoted to Tier 6. While there wasn't a limit to how many times he could try to promote the Phantom Dragon, the cost of each promotion attempt was incredibly expensive, even if it was only the Tier 5 promotion. He was someone fated to reach Tier 6 in the future. So, the Frostflame Phantom Dragon was still a little too weak for him. When Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao saw the disappointed look on Shifeng's face, they suddenly had the urge to snatch the Frostflame Phantom Dragon from him. Although they eventually suppressed their urges, they still couldn't help but cast a contemptuous look at Shifeng to express their thoughts. Wait a minute. After staring at the dark purple pendant in his hand for a moment, Shifeng suddenly thought of a possibility. This thing is considered a tool in God's domain. The time crystals should work on it if it's a tool, right? Although the Ancient Oath's item description didn't clearly state that it was a tool, God's domain was very loose in identifying tools. Apart from food and beverages, most man-made items that weren't weapons or equipment would be recognized as tools. The Ancient Oath might not be labeled as a summoning flute, but it was, without a doubt, a man-made item. Thinking up to this point, Shifeng took out a time crystal from the Seven Luminaries Codex and chose to merge it with the Ancient Oath. The instant the time crystal touched the Ancient Oath, the sound of a system notification immediately entered Shifeng's ears. System: upgrading the Ancient Oath will require 10 time crystals. Current number of time crystals used, 1. Please provide more time crystals if you wish to upgrade the Ancient Oath. It actually works. Shifeng became a lot more spirited when he saw the system notification. 10 time crystals, is it? That's not a lot. I have 11 accumulated right now, just enough to upgrade it once. Immediately, Shifeng took out 9 more time crystals from the Seven Luminaries Codex and chose to upgrade the Ancient Oath. As soon as he did so, the dark purple pendant suddenly released a scorching red glow that caused the surrounding temperature to skyrocket, giving Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao a scare. System: Ancient Oath successfully upgraded. The next upgrade will cost 50 time crystals. When the system notification appeared, white flames appeared around the dark purple pendant, shrouding it. Now, it looked as if the pendant had a life of its own, and it was completely different from before. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3275, Chapter 349, Astonishing Growth. Chapter 3275, Chapter 349, Astonishing Growth. Chapter 349, Astonishing Growth. What an incredible effect. Shifeng was amazed by the dark purple pendant surrounded by white flames. Typically, items in God's domain would only see a change in their appearance when they had received a significant improvement to their existing parameters. Either that or they had undergone a change in their existing effects. In the dark purple pendant's case, if he ignored the addition of the white flames, there weren't any significant changes to the pendant's external appearance. However, it was a different story for the feeling it gave off. Currently, it felt as if the pendant had transformed from a dead object into an object that was seemingly alive. This was a much more incredible transformation than a simple change of appearance. This change surprised not only Shifeng, but Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao as well. The two's mouths fell wide open when they sensed the change in the dark purple pendant's presence. Although they didn't know what Shifeng had done, They knew that whatever he did had allowed the ancient oath to undergo a qualitative improvement. Otherwise, there was no way an item could undergo such a huge change. But, how exactly did Shifeng let a legendary flying mount undergo a qualitative transformation? A mutated Frostflame Phantom Dragon? Shifeng immediately grew ecstatic when he read the Ancient Oath's updated description. Ancient Oath can be used to summon a legendary rank mutated Frostflame Phantom Dragon as a partner to fly and fight freely in the sky. If the mutated Frostflame Phantom Dragon dies, it will need 30 natural days to return to life. Mutation effect grants the Ancient Oath's wielder 10% of the mutated Frostflame Phantom Dragon's basic attributes. In God's domain, mutated monsters were generally 2 ranks stronger than their normal counterparts. Since the Frostflame Phantom Dragon was a basic legendary flying mount, its mutated version would be an advanced legendary flying mount. In terms of life rating, the mutated Frostflame Phantom Dragon was already comparable to 6-winged Valkyries. It also had a 60% chance of getting promoted to Tier 5 and a 15% chance to Tier 6. It was vastly superior to basic legendary flying mounts in this regard. A basic legendary flying mount might have a 5% chance of getting promoted to Tier 6, but according to records made in the Greater God's Domain, nobody had ever managed to promote one to Tier 6. Out of all the legendary flying mounts known to have reached Tier 6, even the weakest one was at the intermediate rank. As for advanced legendary flying mounts, they could reach Tier 6 with 100% certainty so long as players were willing to invest the necessary resources. Moreover, even if Shifeng couldn't afford to promote the mutated Frostflame Phantom Dragon to Tier 6, it would still be of great help to him if it reached Tier 5. This would hold true even if he reached Tier 6 in the future. This was because the Tier 5 mutant was strong enough to hold its ground against even Tier 6 players. In other words, so long as he could promote the mutated Frostflame Phantom Dragon to Tier 5, he'd immediately have a Tier 6 combatant at his command. Although this still wouldn't be enough to keep him completely safe in the ancient River Kingdom, he wouldn't be completely helpless if ordinary Tier 6 experts decided to target him. The Frostflame Phantom Dragon mutated? When Midsummer overheard Shifeng's mutterings, she couldn't help but ask, "Doesn't that mean you have an advanced legendary flying mount now, Brother Black Flame?" An advanced legendary flying mount. This was a flying mount that was destined to advance to Tier 6. In the Greater God's Domain, just owning a Tier 6 flying mount was enough to keep a player safe from most hegemonic powers. Even upper-ranking hegemonic powers wouldn't dare to offend a player with a Tier 6 flying mount casually. This was because players with Tier 6 flying mounts could establish cross-realm chambers of commerce. Traveling between realms in the Greater God's Domain was incredibly challenging. However, whether it was players or powers, anyone seeking to improve and grow stronger in the Greater God's Domain would eventually have to travel to other realms to do quests. This was because every realm had its own unique technology that could be of significant help to players and powers. However, although Tier 5 flying mounts could already travel between realms, traversing between realms on a Tier 5 flying mount was a much more dangerous and time-consuming process than if one were to travel on a Tier 6 flying mount. The carrying capacity of a Tier 5 flying mount was also much smaller than a Tier 6 flying mount. While it was also possible for Tier 6 players to travel between realms without the aid of a flying mount since their bodies were stronger than Tier 5 flying mounts, when it came to traveling between realms, Tier 5 flying mounts were vastly superior to Tier 6 players in terms of efficiency. As for Tier 6 flying mounts, their transportation efficiency was at least 20 times greater than Tier 5 flying mounts. Hence, unless a player was swimming in 7 luminaries crystals, they would inevitably have to seek the help of cross-realm chambers of commerce if they wanted to travel to other realms. Some upper-ranking hegemonic powers even relied on the business of providing cross-realm transportation as their main source of income. However, compared to chambers of commerce that were capable of cross-realm travel, the number of players and powers looking to travel between realms was much, much greater. Supply was nowhere near keeping up with demand. Because of this, any chamber of commerce capable of cross-realm travel would have many hegemonic powers and Tier 6 experts looking to partner with them, let alone a chamber of commerce capable of moving large amounts of cargo. It is indeed an advanced legendary flying mount. "Make sure to keep this secret for me," Shifeng said, nodding. He did not bother hiding the change to the Frostflame Phantom Dragon. Anyone could tell that the Frostflame Phantom Dragon was a basic legendary flying mount so long as they saw it. However, mutated variants of flying mounts wouldn't look any different from their ordinary counterparts on the surface. They only differed in life rating, skills, and spells. So long as nobody mentioned that the Frostflame Phantom Dragon in his possession had mutated, nobody would know it was a mutant. While basic legendary flying mounts were tempting to most hegemonic powers, the various hegemonic powers were well aware that a basic legendary flying mount's limit was only tier 5. So, it still wasn't enough of a temptation for the various hegemonic powers to throw all caution to the wind and target him. However, it was a different story for an advanced legendary flying mount. Even upper-ranking hegemonic powers would take action against him if they found out he owned an advanced legendary flying mount. "Don't worry, Brother Black Flame. We won't tell anyone about it," Midsummer said with a smile. "Also, we've finished sorting through the mutated heroic spirit's loot. Out of the 100+ items it dropped, the least valuable items were inferior legendary materials. As for the more valuable ones, we got over 40 legendary materials, 3 tier 5 magic scrolls, 5 god crystals, and 1 item that's on par with the legendary flying mount." On par with the legendary flying mount. Shifeng was surprised to hear Midsummer's report. Just the fact that the mutated heroic spirit had dropped the ancient oath was already plenty incredible. After all, the unupgraded ancient oath could already rival legendary equipment in value. So, he found it truly hard to believe that the mutated heroic spirit could drop another item that was as valuable as a legendary flying mount. Honestly, I think this item's value is greater than even the Frostflame Phantom Dragon, Wu Xiaoxiao excitedly said as she took out a tattered book and handed it to Shifeng. A summoning array. Shifeng was flabbergasted when he clicked on the tattered book. Primordial Divine Dragon Summoning, Grandmaster Magic Array, gather the power of 108 Divine Dragon Scrolls to form a Tier 5 Primordial Divine Dragon's Phantom for 1 hour. Summoning arrays weren't exactly rare in God's domain. However, most summoning arrays were only at Tier 4, and very few were at Tier 5. Meanwhile, divine dragons were akin to kings among dragons. Their life ratings were also at the top among dragons. Even if the primordial divine dragon summoning could only summon the phantom of a Tier 5 divine dragon, the phantom would still be much stronger than the average legendary monster. If he could mass-produce this summoning array, he could even destroy the ancient river kingdom. Of course, mass production wouldn't be possible. After all, just the 7 luminaries crystals needed to mass-produce the divine dragon scrolls was already beyond the means of ordinary powers. The production of each divine dragon scroll cost 100 units of 7 luminaries crystal. The primordial divine dragon summoning required 108 divine dragon scrolls, which meant each use of the summoning array would cost 10,800 units of 7 luminaries crystal. In addition to 7 luminaries crystal, the divine dragon scrolls also needed many epic materials to produce. These epic materials generally could not be bought using coins. Instead, people would normally only exchange them for magic crystals and mana stones. After a rough calculation, the production of 108 divine dragon scrolls would cost around 300,000 magic crystals. Not to mention, epic materials weren't available in unlimited quantities. Even if he scoured the entire ancient river kingdom, he'd be fortunate if he could get enough materials for a few dozen sets. Just as Shifeng was about to conduct further research on the primordial divine dragon summoning, he suddenly received a system notification. Regional system announcement: a miniature ancient world's world passage will be opening in 3 days. All kingdoms and empires situated near the Sea of Giants are advised to prepare to resist the incoming beast tide. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3276, Chapter 350 World Passage's Opening. Chapter 3276, Chapter 350 World Passage's Opening. Chapter 350 World Passage's Opening. The system announcement echoed across the dozen or so kingdoms and empires situated near the Sea of Giants, the news brought by the announcement sending the players in these countries into a frenzy. Even the Ancient River Kingdom's players, who were feeling overwhelmed because of the Ancient River Secret Land's collapse, showed abnormal levels of excitement in response to this announcement. In a dark alleyway of Gazing Moon City's main street, 6 players wearing cloaks and masks to hide their information and appearances were staring intently at the nearby Gazing Moon Hotel. They behaved as if the Gazing Moon Hotel was the only building that existed in this world. They were so focused on the hotel that even the swaying of the hotel's potted plants was within their perception. However, shortly after the system announcement appeared, a stalwart man dressed in a grey robe suddenly appeared before the 6. When these 6 cloaked individuals saw the grey-robed man, a flash of awe and admiration appeared in their eyes. "You're here, Boss Firefly," a snake-like young man with long hair, the leader of the 6, greeted the grey-robed man. Then, with an excited look, he asked, "Since you've shown up, does that mean there is a change in our plans? Are we heading straight to the Sea of Giants?" The name Firefly was known by almost everyone in the Ancient River Kingdom. Although Firefly was only a Tier 5 Sword Saint, he was a dark player who even the kingdom's 6 ruling hegemonic powers had a headache dealing with. There was also nobody who could escape from Firefly's hands once he set them as his target. In the past, the Ancient River Kingdom's 6 ruling hegemonic powers had tried to eliminate Firefly once and for all. For the sake of accomplishing this goal, each of the 6 ruling hegemonic powers had dispatched one legion consisting of 1,000 Tier 5 players led by one Tier 6 player. However, the result of the operation dumbfounded everyone. Not only did Firefly escape the 6 legions' pursuit with his life, but he had even caused the 6 legions to lose 1/10 of their members. Although none of the Tier 6 legion commanders were killed, they were powerless to do anything to prevent Firefly from escaping. Even now, the Ancient River Kingdom's 6 ruling hegemonic powers were still hunting for Firefly. Yet, despite this, Firefly was still thriving in the Ancient River Kingdom, entering and leaving the various NPC cities whenever he wanted. "No," the stalwart man named Firefly calmly said. "The world passage's opening might be tempting, but Black Flame's importance isn't any lower. The Ancient River Secret Land's disappearance must have something to do with the 10 people who had entered the Ancient River's heart, particularly Black Flame. He has managed to win against Empress Blood Arrow and the undefeated Battle Maniac, so he must have some big secret on him. Now that a world passage connected to him is opening, he is bound to make a move, so do not let your guard down during this period." "Understood," the snake-like youth nodded. "So long as he dares to leave the main street, we'll make sure to capture him before anyone else." Firefly did not say anything more. Then, he disappeared just as abruptly as he appeared. Gazing Moon Hotel, VIP room. How could this be? Wu Xiaoxiao grew incredibly nervous when she saw the system announcement. Once a world's world barrier broke, players in that world would no longer be protected, and players from other worlds could freely enter it. Along with this announcement, their god's domain's struggle over the miniature ancient world with other worlds had officially begun. It was just that she didn't expect the miniature ancient world's world passage would open so much sooner than she expected. It had even opened ahead of their god's domain's world passage. This was undoubtedly a disaster for their god's domain's players in the miniature ancient world. However, when Shifeng saw the anxiety on Wu Xiaoxiao's face, he smiled and said, "This isn't bad news, you know? On the contrary, it is good news for you and Midsummer." "Good news?" Wu Xiaoxiao grew confused. She couldn't understand how she could benefit from this situation in any way. Once the miniature ancient world became fully open to the greater god's domain, most, if not all, of the miniature ancient world's resources would be snatched up by the greater god's domain's various powers. One could easily imagine how this would impact the development of the miniature ancient world's native powers. Meanwhile, as a genius nurtured by the Green God Corporation, it went without saying she would be negatively affected by this situation as well. Shifeng did not hurry to provide Wu Xiaoxiao with an explanation. Instead, he smiled and asked, "Do you know why, even though the miniature ancient world only allows players to enter it if they restart their progress, the various foreign powers still sent their geniuses into the miniature ancient world in droves? Isn't it to train those geniuses?" Wu Xiaoxiao answered almost instinctively. "Training is only one part of the reason," Shifeng said, shaking his head. The various powers' true aim is the moment the world passage opens. Specifically, they are aiming to compete for the world passage's opening rewards. There are rewards for the world passage's opening? Wu Xiaoxiao was surprised. This was the first time she had heard about such a thing. Naturally, any world passage's opening will cause chaos and fluctuations in space and time, allowing dangerous creatures in the void to surge into the worlds connected to the world passage. Meanwhile, players who kill these dangerous creatures will gain contribution points from the Greater Gods Domains Adventurers Association, and these points can be spent to exchange for items in the association's treasury, Shifeng explained. The Adventurers Association's treasury is incredible. Not only does it have legendary weapons and equipment, but it even has legendary equipment sets. However, these items still aren't the most important. These still aren't the most important items? Wu Xiaoxiao was stunned. These were legendary equipment sets they were talking about. Yet, they weren't considered the most important. If a Tier 6 player were to equip such a set, they could basically roam the Starlight Realm unhindered. After all, only a few players in the Starlight Realm owned a legendary equipment set, and they were all peerless individuals known by everyone in the Starlight Realm. Of course not, Shifeng said, rolling his eyes at Wu Xiaoxiao. The Adventurers Association's treasury is unique in the Greater Gods domain. No other organization's treasury can match the Adventurers Association's treasury. Meanwhile, out of all the items in the association's treasury, the most precious ones would undoubtedly have to be the Legacy Guidance Crystals, items that can let players experience the promotion process of gods during ancient and primordial times. There are also the Legacy Crystals that can let players experience the perfect use of gold combat techniques. These are vastly superior to the Legacy Crystals players typically come across in the outside world, which usually only provides an incomplete experience. Currently, although you and Midsummer have qualified for the Galaxy Conglomerate's official invitational competition, it is nothing but a dream for you two to win an invitation from the competition. However, if you can get your hands on the Adventurers Association's legacies, your chances of winning an invitation will increase dramatically. Weapons and equipment might be important, but they could be easily lost. On the other hand, promotion methods and combat techniques would stay with the player forever once learned. These legacies were also the only advantage the Adventurers Association provided to isolated worlds once their world passage opened. When Wu Xiaoxiao heard Shifeng's explanation, she immediately understood why even hegemonic powers originating from higher gods' domains would send their geniuses to the miniature ancient world. Such an opportunity was indeed hard to come by. But I've already left the miniature ancient world, and I don't have any ways to go back, Wu Xiaoxiao said somewhat helplessly. It was a fluke that she managed to enter the Greater Gods domain before the miniature ancient world's world passage opened. She would need a miracle to return to the miniature ancient world. After all, if it was so easy to travel in and out of an isolated world, the various hegemonic powers wouldn't have bothered having their geniuses restart their account's progress. Who says you can't go back? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3277, Dual Absolute. Chapter 3277, Dual Absolute. Chapter 351, Dual Absolute. Miniature Ancient World, Dark Thunder Sea. In the sky above a dark and endless ocean, a luxurious flying ship measuring over 100 meters in length traveled steadily beneath the thundering sea of clouds. Lightning capable of tearing apart space continuously struck the surroundings of the flying ship. However, none of these lightning arcs could get within 20 yards of the flying ship. Any that tried would get stopped by an invisible barrier that protected the ship. This flying ship is incredible. Is this the might of lost technology? A girl with a pristine face and delicate body exclaimed as she looked at the dim sky outside the flying ship. This is indeed an incredible flying ship. But the fare of 100,000 magic crystals per person is equally incredible. Operating this flying ship is even more lucrative than just outright robbing people, a silver-haired girl sipping on black tea at the open-air bar said, sighing. These two girls were incredible beauties, and every one of their actions attracted the attention of many players on the ship. Aren't those two a little too beautiful? Even my guild's #1 beauty pales in comparison. Moreover, both of them have reached level 140 already. That's 5 levels higher than the average level of current mainstream players. Yet, I've never heard of either of their names before. I've never heard about that beauty named Midsummer, but I know that silver-haired beauty. She's the Silver Witch Wu Xiaoxiao. She used to be regarded as a peak genius among our world's younger generation, but she disappeared from the public eye some time ago. I didn't think she would make a reappearance here, and in such a shocking manner, no less. She's probably one of the geniuses invited by the 7 great powers this time. The 7 powers have invited all native geniuses to the Thunder Fortress to wait for the World Passage's opening, promising to protect all qualified geniuses and ensuring these geniuses can safely enter the greater god's domain to receive the best development opportunities. That's most likely the case. I heard that Jun Luosha, the Green God Corporation's #1 genius, is also aboard this flying ship. Jun Luosha? The Dual Absolute is also here? It'd be great if I could meet her in person. Many level 135 plus, Tier 4 players rode on the flying ship. These players excitedly started a discussion when they saw Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao, their discussion hitting a peak when they mentioned the player named Jun Luosha. Jun Luosha? Shifeng grew confused when he overheard the conversation of the players around him. Based on the crowd's discussion, Jun Luosha was apparently the #1 genius of the Green God Corporation. Although the Green God Corporation wasn't comparable to the Greater World's conglomerates, it was still first-rate among the Greater World's various corporations. So, it went without saying that the #1 genius nurtured by the Green God Corporation would be someone with extraordinary strength. Yet, whether it was during his previous life or present life, Shifeng had never heard of Jun Luosha's name or title until he boarded this flying ship. While Shifeng was wondering what kind of person Jun Luosha was, a burst of exclamations came from one part of the ship. Subsequently, a group of a dozen or so players walked out onto the deck from the ship's inner section. Out of this group of players, the person who stood out the most was a woman with light cyan hair and clad in pure white holy armor. The woman exuded an intellectual and mature charm, and every one of her movements drew the heartstrings of those looking at her. Even Midsummer's and Wu Xiaoxiao's charm paled in comparison to this woman's. Only women like Gentle Snow and Hidden Soul could possibly match this woman. Jun Luosha. It's the real Jun Luosha. She's simply too beautiful. Who's that person walking next to Jun Luosha? Is he some corporation's young master? Good guess. The young knight next to Jun Luosha is Dark Dragon Knight Franz, the Desolate Star Corporation's second successor. He is also the commander of the Tower Alliance's 6th Trump Card Legion. When the many young geniuses present saw Jun Luosha and Franz appearing together, they couldn't help but look at the two in envy and admiration. Jun Luosha had many admirers, some of them being the young masters of corporations. However, out of all these admirers, the one most worthy of Jun Luosha would have to be Franz. The Desolate Star Corporation was a very powerful and wealthy existence. It owned many hegemonic powers, and its influence extended even to other realms. The fact that Franz was second in line to inherit this powerful corporation already put him well ahead of the competition. On top of that, even though Franz hadn't reached 30 years old yet, he had already become a titled expert and the commander of the Tower Alliance's 6th Trump Card Legion. The average genius simply couldn't hope to compare to him. If these achievements weren't enough to prove his superiority, the dozen or so people standing guard around him should be more than enough. These people were Franz's bodyguards, and they were all 4th floor experts. Normally, if a 4th floor expert chose to join a hegemonic power, they would be given an executive member's treatment and granted the position of a legion's vice commander. Yet, now, these people had chosen to work as Franz's bodyguards. Some hegemonic powers' guild leaders didn't even enjoy such treatment. While everyone was curiously discussing why Jun Luosha and Franz would be together, Jun Luosha suddenly walked up to Wu Xiaoxiao, a twinkle of joy in her eyes. I finally get to see you again, Xiaoxiao. I thought you met with some big trouble and had to go into hiding, Jun Luosha said, feelings of concern and relief on her face as she looked at Wu Xiaoxiao. Since you're here now, come with me to the 3rd floor's restaurant. They serve many delicacies that can permanently increase basic attributes there. As soon as Jun Luosha finished speaking, Franz, in a somewhat prideful tone, said, "Hello, Miss Wu. I am a good friend of Miss June. Since you are Miss Jun's junior, why don't you come with us? Many important figures from the various hegemonic powers are gathered in the third floor's restaurant. I'm sure you will have significant gains in the Thunder Fortress if you get acquainted with them. It'll also be safer in the restaurant." Upon hearing Franz's invitation, many of the geniuses on the deck couldn't help but look at Wu Xiaoxiao enviously. Because this flying ship was the safest and quickest way to reach the Thunder Fortress, the cost of boarding this ship was exorbitant. Each person had to pay a non-negotiable fee of 100,000 magic crystals. To get into the flying ship's third-floor restaurant, players would even need a VIP membership. Meanwhile, not only did players have to pay 300,000 magic crystals for this membership, but they also needed to show proof of having ruled over a city. However, so long as players got into the third floor's restaurant, not only would they receive greater security, but they would also get the opportunity to interact with various big shots. "Senior sister, Captain Franz, thank you for your kind gesture, but my friends and I like the scenery here, so I won't be going with you," Wu Xiaoxiao said, rejecting the invitation without hesitation. "Moreover, I think that this place is also quite safe." TL notes. 1. Dual Absolute. If I were to translate the roars of Jun Luosha's title in full, it would be something like Sword and Medicine Dual Absolute. It's too long for my liking, so I shortened it to Dual Absolute. I'm bringing this up since the Sword and Medicine part gives a lot of information about Jun Luosha. She's probably a swordsman berserker plus alchemist, or she has a hidden class that lets her become a healer plus swordsman. Thank you for reading on my me. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3278, Chapter 352, Half-Step Sword Saint. Chapter 3278, Chapter 352, Half-Step Sword Saint. Chapter 352, Half-Step Sword Saint. Quite safe? When Franz heard Wu Xiaoxiao's statement, he looked behind Wu Xiaoxiao, a trace of disdain briefly appearing in his eyes when he saw Midsummer and Shifeng, who wore a cloak with Zero Wings Guild emblem pinned on it. Then, he chuckled and said, "In that case, I will respect your decision, Miss Wu. But if you encounter any problems afterward, feel free to find me. I can't say I can solve all problems, but I still hold enough influence to solve most problems you'll face in this miniature ancient world." None of the young geniuses on the deck refuted Franz's words. On the contrary, all of them agreed with his claim. There might be many hegemonic powers and corporations in the miniature ancient world, but Franz could still be regarded as a powerhouse. Unless necessary, most powers and corporations would choose to take a step back out of respect for Franz. In the meantime, Jun Luosha carefully scrutinized Shifeng as if she was looking at some kind of rare animal. Then, unable to help herself, she whispered to Wu Xiaoxiao, "Xiaoxiao, is this friend of yours that strong?" The miniature ancient world was currently in an incredibly chaotic state. The miniature ancient world's native powers were even facing increasingly greater pressure from the various foreign powers. It was especially true when it came to the Thunder Fortress, since that would be the only entrance to the greater god's domain. It was no exaggeration to say that whoever controlled the Thunder Fortress would be securing themselves a huge fortune. For this reason, the various native powers began to join forces. In response, the various foreign powers were also looking to weaken the various native powers. If an opportunity appeared, the various foreign powers wouldn't refuse a chance to eliminate native experts and geniuses. This was also why Jun Luosha wanted to bring Wu Xiaoxiao with her. Meanwhile, as a newcomer to the Green God Corporation's Genius Training Program, Wu Xiaoxiao was very talented and alert, so there was no way the girl wouldn't understand what she was trying to do. Yet, Wu Xiaoxiao still refused her invitation. This meant that Wu Xiaoxiao was either confident in her companion's strength. "He is very strong," Wu Xiaoxiao said with a faint smile. "How strong are we talking about?" Jun Luosha scrutinized Shifeng's inconspicuous appearance again after hearing Wu Xiaoxiao's answer. Then, she chuckled and asked, "How does he compare to the God list's current rank 1 player?" After thinking for a moment, Wu Xiaoxiao firmly said, he should be stronger than the God list's current rank 1. Keep on boasting. Do you even know who the God list's rank 1 player is? Jun Luosha rolled her eyes at Wu Xiaoxiao. She felt that her junior must have been brainwashed to believe that the inconspicuous-looking Shifeng could be stronger than the number 1 player on the God-ranked expert ranking list. Trekt. The current number 1 player on the Miniature Ancient Worlds God list. Most of the Miniature Ancient Worlds native powers might not know much about him, but he was a name known by all in the Greater Gods Domain's Magus Kingdom. His fame and strength were on par with the Myriad Forest Empire's Empress Blood Arrow and the Red Star Kingdom's undefeated Battle Maniac. Together, the three were known as the Three Invincibles in the Myriad Forest Empire and its neighboring kingdoms. At Tier 4, nobody could hope to compare against them. I'm not boasting, senior sister, Wu Xiaoxiao said, hurriedly shaking her head. Wu Xiaoxiao had done a lot of research on the God list's current rank 1 player. So, she knew that since Trekt first debuted until now, he had not lost against anybody he had fought against. He was essentially invincible among his peers, and his achievements were not at all inferior to Empress Blood Arrow and the undefeated Battle Maniac. However, Shifeng had beaten both Empress Blood Arrow and the undefeated Battle Maniac to secure first place in the Ancient River Kingdom's rookie competition. So, it was by no means an exaggeration to say that Shifeng was stronger than Trekt. Just when Jun Luosha was about to ask Wu Xiaoxiao for more details, a loud commotion came from the third-floor restaurant's entrance. When everyone on the deck turned to look at the third-floor restaurant, they saw Franz and his bodyguards getting stopped outside the restaurant's entrance. What is the meaning of this, Calgaran? Franz demanded as he looked at the middle-aged male elementalist blocking his way. Do you want to start a war between our two corporations? Nothing of the sort. It's just that there is a distinguished guest inside who doesn't wish to be disturbed, so I will have to ask you and your group to wait outside, Calgaran, the middle-aged elementalist, said unhurriedly. Don't worry, it won't take long. You just have to wait until tomorrow when the flying ship reaches the Thunder Fortress. Calgaran did not seem to care when he heard Franz's threat of starting a war between corporations. On the contrary, he looked at Franz with eyes full of mockery. Meanwhile, when the players on the deck saw this situation, none felt surprised. The Desolate Star Corporation might be powerful, but the Divine Will Corporation that Calgaran was from was not in any way inferior. On the contrary, the Divine Will Corporation was slightly superior since, unlike the Desolate Star Corporation, it held shares in a pseudo-hegemonic power. Moreover, Calgaran was the Divine Will Corporation's first successor. So, in terms of status, he was above Franz. A distinguished guest. Franz's expression darkened a little. Then, he gestured for his bodyguards to force their way through, saying, I want to see who this distinguished guest is to dare to disrespect me. He had just assured Wu Xiaoxiao and Jun Luosha that he could solve most problems in the miniature ancient world. Yet, immediately afterward, he was getting stopped outside the flying ship's third-floor restaurant. If he took this slight lying down, he'd become a laughingstock. However, before Franz's bodyguards could make a move, the restaurant's front door suddenly opened. Then, a stalwart man, clad carrying a great sword on his back and clad in broken armor, walked out of the restaurant. As soon as this stalwart man appeared, Calgaran's dozen or so bodyguards and Calgaran himself respectfully bowed their heads to the man. Lord Saint Nine. Calgaran greeted the stalwart man, his words instantly shocking everyone present. Franz, in particular, revealed a look of despair when he heard the stalwart man's name. Saint Nine. The current rank 10 player on the God-ranked expert list. Despite being a titled expert, Franz felt suffocated just by standing in Saint Nine's presence. As for his bodyguards, even though they were fourth-floor experts, their faces turned pale, and they couldn't help but kneel on the ground to keep themselves from collapsing, evidence that they were under immense pressure. Some of their faces had even started to contort. A half-step sword saint. Whether it was Franz or the other Tier 4 experts present, every one of them instinctively thought of this term. Although Saint Nine was still a Tier 4 sword emperor right now, his basic attributes and concentration had already reached the Tier 5 standard. The average Tier 4 expert simply couldn't hope to stand up to him. It wouldn't be surprising if Saint 9 could fight against actual Tier 5 players. Subsequently, Saint 9 took a step forward and instantly appeared in front of Franz. Then, after taking a moment to look at Franz in silence, Saint 9 indifferently asked, "So, Franz, do you think I need to show you any respect? Thank you for reading on me. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 3279, Chapter 353, Do You Dare to Come Forward? Chapter 3279, Chapter 353, Do You Dare to Come Forward? Chapter 353, Do You Dare to Come Forward? Although Saint 9 spoke calmly and only several people nearby could hear him, Franz's complexion paled when he heard Saint 9's words. In reality, Saint 9 didn't have a powerful personal background. He had relied entirely on the Twin Saints Alliance's resources to grow to his current strength. When it came to status and background, there was no question that Franz was overwhelmingly superior to Saint 9. However, the problem was that they were currently in the miniature ancient world, a place where even the strongest players were only at Tier 4. In this place, Saint 9 was akin to a walking disaster for the various powers. Under normal circumstances, Franz wouldn't have feared Saint 9 at all. At worst, he would die once. However, the world passage was opening soon. If Franz got killed on the flying ship, he'd essentially have to say goodbye to the world passage's opening rewards. It should be known that the main reason players and powers from outside the miniature ancient world came to this world was so that they could acquire the world passage's opening rewards, and Franz was no exception. Do you take the Desolate Star Corporation for a pushover, Saint 9? While Franz was in a state of panic, the masked lady standing behind Franz suddenly spoke up. After saying so, the lady with a pair of enchanting silver eyes waved the silver staff she wielded and merged 3 Tier 4 spells into one. Immediately afterward, over 200 blades made of bone-chilling flames appeared around Saint 9 and struck at him, each of these soul blades leaving behind a fiery silver chain in their wake. Every soul blade carried power at the Tier 5 standard, and the number of soul blades the lady summoned had already gone far beyond the maximum number of attacks Tier 4 players could react to simultaneously. Moreover, the silver chains the soul blades created continuously reduced the space available for Saint 9 to maneuver around. "Auntie, you succeeded." Franz grew ecstatic when he saw the soul blades and silver chains surrounding Saint 9. The masked lady was none other than Favre, the Tower Alliance's Great Elder. At the same time, she was Maria and Franz's aunt. Originally, Favre was a paragon widely known during her era. However, she had long retired from the public eye, so not much information was known about her nowadays. People only remembered her title of Silver-Eyed Witch. Hardly anybody knew that Favre was researching how to combine 3 spells, in other words, triple fusion magic, to unleash strength above her tier. Now, though, his aunt Favre had succeeded. Meanwhile, the fusion of 3 Tier 4 spells would result in power that could overshadow even Tier 5 spells. However, before Franz could relax, he suddenly heard Saint 9 speaking. "You are still not qualified to be my opponent." Before Franz realized it, Saint 9 had vanished from before him and reappeared in front of Favre, his greatsword held in his hands. Then, Saint 9 swung his greatsword at Favre. Boom! Bright silver light enveloped the flying ship's 3rd floor, and everyone idly stared at the light as if time had stopped moving. When the light faded, only a broken magic barrier remained in Favre's original location. As for Favre herself, she had crashed into one of the flying ship's sails, her silver mask shattering and her HP bar having little to nothing left. How is this possible? This scene dumbfounded Franz and his bodyguards, none of them daring to believe this to be true. One strike. Saint 9 had executed only one attack, yet this one attack had instantly killed Favre, the Tower Alliance's Great Elder and the Silver-Eyed Witch whose name once shook the Starlight Realm. If not for the silver mask Favre wore, allowing her to evade death once, she wouldn't even be alive right now. The God list's rank 10 is this powerful? Following this situation was a question that appeared in not just Franz's and his bodyguards' minds but also the minds of many young geniuses on the ship. In everyone's minds, Saint 9 might be ranked 10th on the God-ranked expert list, but he was still only a titled expert. Meanwhile, Favre was similarly a titled expert. Even though she was a little older, she remained in her peak condition. So, everyone assumed there wouldn't be too huge of a gap between them. Yet, reality couldn't be any further from that. If Saint Nine could instantly kill even a titled expert, wouldn't it be child's play for him to kill ordinary fourth-floor experts? Moreover, if Saint Nine could only rank at 10th place on the God list despite being so strong already, how frightening were the God list's other top 10 experts? Now that she's dealt with, it's your turn next. Saint Nine said as he raised his great sword and turned to look at Franz and his bodyguards. Suddenly, Franz and his bodyguards felt as if they could hear Death's footsteps. It felt as if Death was already waving at them. The desolate Star Corporation's second successor? Titled expert? At this moment, all of these things had become nothing but a joke, and it was all because they weren't aware of how monstrous Saint Nine was. In the meantime, Calgaran gleefully watched all this happening from one side. His rivalry with Franz had been going on for some time now, so he couldn't be happier to see Franz's demise. At the same time, Calgaran finally understood why the various hegemonic powers were reluctant to offend paragons, even when these paragons were at a low tier. Paragons, particularly top-ranking paragons of the greater god's domain's various countries like Saint Nine, were simply inhuman. It might be a little far-fetched to say that Saint Nine could go up against 1,000 fourth-floor experts of the same tier, but it was definitely possible for him to go up against 100 fourth-floor experts and win. Meanwhile, just the thought of a paragon like Saint Nine reaching tier 6 gave Calgaran goosebumps. Anyway, with the current situation, the desolate Star Corporation had essentially lost its chance of acquiring the World Passage's opening rewards. Xiao Xiao, get ready to run with your party, it's no longer safe here. Jun Luosha said when she saw Saint Nine raising his greatsword against Franz, a bitter smile forming on her face. Saint Nine can probably rival the God list's top 3 with his current strength. If he decides to get ruthless, nobody on this ship can live to see the Thunder Fortress. However, in response to Jun Luosha's anxiety, Wu Xiaoxiao shook her head and calmly said, Saint Nine is indeed strong, but you don't need to be so anxious, senior sister. We are very safe here. So long as the guild leader is around, Saint Nine can't harm us in the slightest. Although Wu Xiaoxiao didn't speak loudly, everyone on the flying ship was a Tier 4 player. In a quiet environment, a Tier 4 player could hear a person's normal speaking voice even from several hundred yards away. So, even though Wu Xiaoxiao was only speaking normally, everyone aboard the ship could hear her words. Meanwhile, upon hearing Wu Xiaoxiao's words, Saint Nine suddenly stopped his attack against Franz. Then, he turned to look at Wu Xiaoxiao, a cold glint in his eyes. What a big mouth you have there, little girl, Calgaran said, laughing. But will that so-called guild leader of yours dare to come forward and show himself to Lord Saint Nine? As soon as Calgaran finished speaking, Jun Luosha couldn't help but hold her head. Her junior might be good at many things, but it would seem that she was terrible at reading the room. With this, not only were Franz and his bodyguards finished, but even they were doomed as well. It was especially true for the guild leader whom Wu Xiaoxiao mentioned. That person most likely wished to choke Wu Xiaoxiao right about now. However, behaving as if she wasn't aware of the mess she had just created, Wu Xiaoxiao turned to look at the cloaked swordsman sitting nearby and fawningly said, Guild leader, I've joined Zero Wing already, so you can't just watch me make a fool of myself. This will be the only exception. After letting out a sigh, the cloaked man stood up and began making his way up to Saint Nine. Thank you for reading on my me. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,